Thank you, everybody, for coming. They don't know what they're missing out there, so you're in the right place to be. My name is Keith. I'm with the California Walnut Board, and we're going to have a fun tour here of walnuts. And whenever you look at the title of the presentation, Closing the Innovation Gap with Walnuts, not a lot of people think about innovation whenever they think of walnuts. But hopefully throughout the course of this session, we're going to show you how walnuts can be used in two different ways in new product development. Our first way is in kind of that plus one mentality. We know there's an innovation gap in the food industry right now. It's been written about everywhere, where the number of new product launches has leveled off since COVID and hasn't rebounded. And then the ones that are coming out are generally product renovations. Walnut can go well in those plus one products, like you see up top with Dolly Parton's Banana Nut Muffin, as well as a food bar. Those are existing products where walnuts have been added to kind of add that additional texture, nutritional benefit, functionality, and just familiarity. We also have the innovation piece of walnuts. Probably haven't seen those bottom two products. The one on the left is from Switzerland. They're called Karma Bean and Walnut Balls. Essentially, it is a deep-fried walnuts, beans, and oats product that's sold as a plant-based meatball. The one next to it is even more exotic. That's from Hong Kong. That's a conch meat and fish maw with walnuts, red dates, lotus seed, and yam soup. So whenever we think about walnuts, and what I want to convey throughout today is that, yes, they're great in those traditional categories that you've always associated with walnuts, but there's so much more to this amazing tree nut that can be used in an innovative manner. Before we really dig into it, though, I want to do level set on who we are as the California Walnut Board. The first thing is we don't sell walnuts. So there's no purchase orders under your seats that we're going to pressure you into filling out. What we are is we're an industry-funded agriculture group where we're focused on education like this event, marketing, research development, all those amazing things that we work on to get walnuts in front of consumers, food service, as well as food manufacturers. I said earlier, my name is Keith. I work on our food and beverage innovation program. And what that is I work directly with food manufacturers, along with my colleague Deirdre in back, to help kind of companies take ideas, inspiration into the marketplace using walnuts. We've also got here today Jennifer Olmstead, which I believe she's somewhere in back. She's the Senior Director of U.S. Marketing for the California Walnut Board, and then Chef Robert Danhai up front, who's going to take us through all the amazing tastings we're going to go through today. So, what do you really know about walnuts? That's a question I ask a lot of people whenever I started walking in the walnut industry. And there's three things that everybody kind of said whenever I asked, what do you know about walnuts? First thing is very timing appropriate. They go amazing in brownies. They go amazing in cookies. I'm adding them to all of my holiday goodness recipes that I'm crafting at home. This is true. Second thing people say is, oh, I can buy them in the baking aisle. Also true. Because they go so well in those products, you can also, make sense that they're in the baking aisle. Third thing is most consumers know that walnuts are a nutritious product. The depth of knowledge they know about how nutritious they are, we'll get to a little later, but they generally know they're a heart-healthy nut. They've got the American Heart Association's Heart Check certification right on the front. So that's what generally people know about walnuts, is that they're great in baked goods, they're sold in the baking aisle, and they're healthy. But that's only half the story. If we think about the other half of the story, we get a lot more interesting information. I showed some products earlier about walnuts in the plant-based space. Everybody knows Amy's Kitchen, right? One of the most popular natural and organic brands out there. Did you know that they've used walnuts for over 10 years in their veggie burgers? They've got two different ones out there, the Sonoma burger and the California burger, each using walnuts in them to add a little bit of texture. So whenever you think about walnuts, it's not just the baking aisle they belong in, it's the entire store. Walnuts are also produce too, It's something we like to say. So whenever you think about walnuts, it's not something that can just be found in the baking aisle. There's also a home for walnuts throughout the retail store. Whether you're talking about in the produce aisle, which there's been studies out that the more there's a 78% chance greater increase in purchasing power whenever you pair walnuts with fresh fruit or produce. So they have a home there. And then the final thing is really explaining the depth of their health benefits. So we have a global health research program that we've invested a lot of money in over the years. And the research that comes out about walnuts is pretty impressive and continual. A study I want to briefly talk about came out recently. Title of it is Walnut Consumption Shows Protective Effects Against Academic Stress and the Potential to Improve Sleep. So we're talking about stress, brain, we're talking about Generation Z, and we're talking about sleep. 3 of the biggest buzzwords out there whenever it comes to trending new product development. And what the study showed was eating about 2 ounces of walnuts daily for 16 weeks prevented negative changes in self-reported mental health-related scores and self-reported scores of stress and depression during a stressful academic period among university students. So, whenever we're kind of, looking at walnuts over the next 5 to 10 years, the heart's information is great, but there's so much more research coming out about the overall benefits of walnuts, which is great as the food goes more towards kind of that functional approach to food where we're trying to cure something or we're trying to aid something, trying to abet something that somebody's looking for. So there's a lot to learn about walnuts, and this is going to apply to if you're in the retail space, if you're in the food manufacturing space, or if you're in the food service space, because walnuts have a home in each of those industries. So the question we asked ourselves last year was, how do we educate people about walnuts? And surprisingly, what we came up with is you glue googly eyes on walnuts. And that is about the most effective form of marketing you can do. Everybody on their tray should have Shelly. Shelly is your best friend. Whenever you think about developing new products, Shelly is your +1. She's your ride or die. She's going to make your good products better, but she's also the voice of the California Walnut Board. So whenever you have a question, a technical question about how I incorporate a walnut butter into a product, into an ice cream, or how I can carry, a flavored walnut in the produce aisle, you turn to Shelly, you turn to us. So what we did last year, Shelly was introduced at IFT because we want to be known as synonymous with innovation, is we actually bought 1,000 googly eyes on Amazon for $6.99. Really, really cheap. And I've been in the food industry for 20 years, and it was by far the most effective marketing campaign we've ever done. We had people lining up just to grab the Shellys. Each one has a personality, as you can tell, so you can look at the different spacing of the eyes, and it's really allowed us to kind of make a connection with you in this room about how we can help you. We're not just a board. We are something more. We are really there to help inspire and to work with you. And unbeknownst to us, there's scientific research behind this too. There was actually a study that researchers found that by adding googly eyes to some produce, you increase purchasing and decrease food waste. So we're on to something here. This came out after we did it. So before I turn it over to Robert to go through our first tasting, I just want to remind you that whenever you think throughout the day, whenever we talk about the various tastings, the various products we're going to go through, if you have ideas, sure, go back and test them, but make sure you email me, make sure you email Robert. We can get you samples. We can help support your product development needs, because that's what we're really here to do, is we're here to partner with food brands to launch innovative new products. And I'm super pleased to introduce Robert now, who's going to lead you through our first tastings.
Thank you, Keith. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time. My name is Robert Danhai. I'm a chef actually based here in Los Angeles, and I'm the chef in residence for the California Walnut Board. So I lead the food service efforts primarily, but also collaborate with Keith in the retail space and have been in product development for, goodness, 20 years at this point, but a chef for almost 40. So today, what I'd like you to do is really reconsider what a walnut is and how it tastes. But more importantly than that, oh, I need the clicker. That would make more sense. There we go. So think about it, folks. Everyone in the food and beverage industry grows, makes, buys, sells, or markets an ingredient, a component, or a build, or a consumer product good, right? That's just one way to slice it and dice it. And if you think about it, sometimes what the Walnut Board is called is a commodity board. Commodity to me is almost a four-letter word because it's not just a commodity. But when something is just an ingredient, walnuts are produce, and you're buying it on the open market, price is based on supply and demand. But fortunately, because of everyone in this room, each one of you have a part to play to build the value as you take this ingredient, this produce that's nutritious, that's flavorful, and transform it into a component of some sort. Some of you may make a butter, you might make a sauce, you might make a meat replacement. So as products move, an ingredient comes from into a component, then what we do, we stack them up, we mix them up, we layer them, we mix them up, and boom, now we have a build, right? Makes sense. And as you're going through this, think about it. In this audience, how many people actually are owners of companies that are making something that is a bar or a snack or something in that category? How many people are doing something that's in like sauces or meals or something on that side? Okay, so we have a cross-section there. Well, if you think about it, when you go into the component and you're looking for something, you're looking for an ingredient that has very specific attributes to it. Cost, organoleptic properties, what does it taste like, where can I get it? Soon as it comes into a component and you're bringing something in that's ready-made, well, now it's not a commodity anymore. It actually has value. And when you move it into the consumer product good, it turns into a whole nother thing. So what I want to share with you today, I keep using that one, thank you. What I'd like to share with you today, this is a flavor wheel that we've developed in the last few months, and this isn't my chef opinion on what does it taste like. This is actually going through 34 different peer-reviewed papers out there, and we're going to go through a tasting exercise now to show you the 360-degree flavor experience of what a walnut can do, and because of what it looks like, because of what it smells like, because of what it tastes like, it'll inform how it's used, believe it or not. So let's do this. First thing, on your tray, you're going to see we have several tasting for you today. And the first one that we're going to do is it depends on how you're holding it. We're going to get into the one that's in the middle, which is a whole walnut that is not peeled. So it's one in the middle in the 4-ounce container with the cover on it. Everyone see that? Regular walnuts, as you'd call them, pieces and halves. If you can open that up for me. Let's take a look at that. And when we look at that, you can see the attribute, what it looks like. Now, why is it important that it's gnarly and looks like a brain? If you're in product development, who's actually doing R&D as opposed to owning or marketing? Mostly marketing, correct? Couple in the back. So the physical properties of a walnut are special. Let me give you one example. Because the walnut has that gnarly shape, it has a physical property that helps it perform in certain baked goods, such as a scone. Why would it matter a scone unnamed other nut that has a smooth elliptical shape, let's say? If you make a scone and you have a walnut in there, I know this sounds crazy, but it's really important. As you bite down through that, a couple things can happen. If you break it and it doesn't have that gnarliness, it's literally going to fall out. I've seen it happen countless times. Number two, it's going to hold in that place. So, it's simple as that, but it's one example of it actually informs how it's going to be used. Then the next thing is the aroma. Now, if you look at the various aromas that it comes from one single walnut, all the way from meaty to earthy to grassy to fruity to grain, it is produce. So take a smell of that for a moment. Just take a moment. And if you look at the different attributes on here, how many of them can you identify? And for what you're doing in your products, probably not, unless you're roasting them or it is a primary ingredient, it's going to be a secondary attribute for you. But where it really gets interesting is with the physical texture. So now we're going to do an exercise if you haven't eaten all your walnuts yet. And if you could follow along with me, I'd appreciate it. It's this simple. Find the largest half walnut that you can of the skin-on walnut. Don't touch the skinless yet. You'll get to that soon. And you're going to grab that, don't eat it yet, and then take that walnut, place it in between two of your molars, and slowly bite down and follow from crispy to crunchy, and just start chewing it, and watch what happens. Watch the evolution of a simple ingredient that hasn't even been heat treated yet. And for some products, it's really important of the physical texture, not only the aroma and the way that it looks. So notice how it goes, and it goes from crispy to crunchy to brittle, turns into a paste. It goes all the way up there. You might want some water. I forgot to remind you to grab some water. If we have some in the back of the room, that would be great. So notice the difference. So different shapes and forms. Today we're going to go through, when you are developing different products, the different shapes and market forms that are available. Because I know in R&D, I've been on the bench for decades, what your ingredient is, who you can get it from, what the market form is, what the pack size, do we have to process it, how long is the shelf life? These are all critical questions to what you're doing. It's not just about making food taste good. And fortunately, more than ever, there are more forms of walnuts than ever before. So now, primary taste. How many people know the word umami? What does it mean? What's some synonyms for umami? Savory, right? Deliciousness. Awesome, I agree, it's awesome. Umami is another word for savory. It came out in 1908, Dr. Ikeda-san, who invented MSG, which is a synthesized version. But what's amazing about walnuts, like no other nut on the planet, is the amount of glutamic acid, free, natural glutamic acid that they're in. So they make foods more savory. They make them richer. And one thing about umami, different than your other four tastes that you have, thank you, Keith, other than sweet, sour, salty, bitter, things that have umami in it, and this is important and based on science, will raise the perception of salt, will raise the perception of sweetness, and change the perception of bitter to lower, and change the perception of sour lower. It actually changes the way your brain perceives the other taste. It's not just sweet and sour in the sauce, which you're about to experience. So walnuts are the umami meat. And there's a QR code if you want to look at the papers that this came from. They'll be up there. So lastly, I just wanted to show, for those of you in product development or own the companies and have your team that are working on this, what chemical compounds that are inside here often is what we look to match flavors, to pair flavors, to put things together in your meals, in your chocolates, right? This goes with this. It's not just preference. It's an innate preference for things that go together. And some people say grow together, go together. But in this case, there's a lot of complexity in this simple tree nut that was harvested and brought to you by farmers in California, because 99% of the walnuts that you eat in this country come from California. So you've been eating California walnuts for quite a long time. So now what I'd like you to do is open up the skinless walnuts. Has anyone ever tried a skinless walnut? Get ready for the difference in taste. Grab that. Snack on a few of those. So what's happened is, through our water process, no chemical process, that the skin, the pellicle actually, which has a lot of the astringency where people often confuse as bitter. They'll say, oh, that's bitter. It's actually astringent. It's drying in the mouth. Notice, gone. There's times I want that rich, savory, everything on it nut. And there's other times I want something that's sweet and creamy and plays a background, or as you're going to taste in a few minutes, a creamy, delicious dip that is non-dairy, based on 100% nuts, or at least that part of it is. Any comments? What do you taste there? Definitely the cream, right? And that's a walnut. Not like any walnut you've tasted before, I'm sure. Anything else? Any other what would you do with this different than a regular walnut? It's much sweeter. The third palate, the residence time on your palate, right, as it stays there. Yeah, it's awesome, isn't it? Okay. Well, I'd like to turn this back over to Keith, and then I'll be back up to take you some more of those tastings. So we've got more food to taste. I baked those empanadas for you today.
Don't eat the empanadas too early, though. You got to wait. You got to be patient. So thank you, Chef. So the first time he walked me through that kind of exercise with the both skin-on walnuts and the skinless walnuts, it really opened my eyes, yes, to the creaminess of the skin off, but also to the complexity that the skin on brings. And I think that's one of its main benefits whenever you talk about it being used in food. So I'm going to go through some categories where we find walnuts are trending right now and where we think is a great opportunity to develop new products with walnuts. As you can see here, there's three main reasons food and beverage manufacturers should be using walnuts. The first reason is they're versatile. They can be used in everything from bakery, and a lot of times people think bakery, they think sweet goods, but some of the largest pan breads in the United States use walnuts. They provide that texture to a loaf. It can also be found in granolas, food bars, plant-based dairy, walnut cream, which we're going to be tasting a little bit later, as well as packaged foods and frozen meals. So whenever we think about walnuts, they really span the entire supermarket aisles. So let's start with baking, which is our main category. What's trending in the baking industry? Number one trend is nostalgia. So looking at something old but putting a new spin on it. This has been really beneficial for walnuts. It's been one of the reasons why walnuts are strong in the baking industry, because people are used to seeing them. There's a familiarity with them that they want, sort of like in this product from Tate's, which is a take on your traditional walnut chocolate chip cookie, but it's in a shelf-stable format and tastes just as good as your grandma makes it, allegedly. I don't know how your grandma's cookies are, but so that's one of the big things. What also is unique about these products is they're permissibly indulgent, and this is really where walnuts fit in as well. So they're considered a premium nut, yes. They're also considered an indulgent nut because they go in indulgent properties, but whenever consumers eat them or see them in a product, they have this health halo around them that attracts them to them because they know they're good for their heart and they know they should be eating their handful of walnuts every day. We've got some products that serve as an inspiration for you. We've already talked about the Dolly Parton, but we've got a global CPG product. This is from M&S Foods. It's your traditional coffee and walnut cake. And then I love this one right here from Butchertown, just because you can see the inclusion nature of walnut. Whenever we think about that texture that Robert brought us through, that's why they're used in so many products. I call it the Goldilocks texture. It's not too hard, it's not too soft, it's right there in the middle. It gives you the crunch that you need. This also plays well on the cereal side. This was I thought one of the most exciting cereal launches last year. It's Kashi. It was their cinnamon walnut, and this was their vitamin D cereal. So they came out with a line of vitamin D cereals. Again, pairing a walnut in something like that is going to give it that health halo. So what's trending in cereal is obviously, less processed, more natural. But what's also trending is cereal has become a lifestyle choice. So you eat cereal for a benefit, a functional cereal. I'm eating cereal because I want protein. I'm eating cereal because I want vitamin D to start my day. So building a product around that using walnuts is definitely something that is beneficial. One of the main reasons people use walnut, or one of the big occasions consumers use walnuts at home, is to throw it on top of their cereal, their oatmeal, their granola, their yogurt. So why don't food manufacturers do that for them by putting it in there? That's what these manufacturers have done. Couple interesting products. I love this one from Purely Elizabeth. It's called a superfood oatmeal, and I love that they put right above superfood walnuts. Again, it's that packaging tie-in that's tying walnuts as that nutritious product. This is another one, True Munch. What's unique about this is you never know how much granola to put in a product, right? So they have a bag of granola that's in individual servings that you can just dump right over your product, and each of them have walnuts. And on food service side, walnuts are used in this bowl from Playa Foods that also has blueberries, flax, strawberries, all things that are considered, that health halo. On the snacking side, walnuts are, have a huge opportunity as well, mainly because functional snacking is becoming such a predominant part of why people buy snack foods. And whenever we think of functional snacking, two of the main trends that are going right now are mood foods and things for cognition. We saw from those studies earlier was health research that backs up that walnuts are good for the mood as well as good for cognition. Walnuts are also the perfect vehicle for on-trend flavors, and I'll tell you why in a little bit as we're going to taste another one. And then the most important thing as we talk about functional snacking is walnuts have ALA omega-3s. Did everybody know that walnuts have omega-3 fatty acids? They are one of the only plant-based foods that are an excellent source and the only nut that is an excellent source of ALA omega-3s, which we'll talk about a little later. But let's do another tasting. First, here are some exciting products, but what I really want to focus on is this tasting. So if you look at one of your containers, you'll see one of the walnuts that you haven't ate before, and this is Diamond's Hot Honey Walnuts. So I get asked a lot, oh my God, I've never had a seasoned walnuts. Why do these taste so good? There's actually scientific reasons why seasoned walnuts work so well. First is texture enhances flavors. So as we eat, a texture is going to make something taste better. It's going to change the entire eating experience as opposed to if we were just eating a smooth kind of products. The second thing is the fat content of walnuts, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Seasonings dissolve into fat. So as you sort of consume that seasoned walnut and the fat in the walnuts, you're kind of mixing those seasonings in to make it more intense. And then the final thing is it's got all those nooks and crannies in it. That gives opportunities for seasonings to bunch up and really provide that burst of flavor. So it's a dynamic eating experience. It's not one note all around. So what did everybody think of these hot honey walnuts? Good? Yeah. It's a great vehicle for trending flavors. This is another one of my favorite brands. They went straight to the core of walnuts being tied into brain foods. Walnuts look like brains if you look at them, so they used in their brand Albert Einstein. Again, tying in the brain benefits of walnuts into it. And then they also used it with the toasted churro, on-trend flavor, so it's a great kind of vehicle for trending flavors. Last two categories are kind of more non-traditional categories. This is in the frozen and ready-made category. Why consumers are looking for walnuts in these products is they're looking for a restaurant experience. Restaurants have become very expensive. The numbers are dwindling. Consumers are wondering, can I afford to go out to eat? Everybody loves going out to eat, but they also want to be able to provide a restaurant quality meal or as close as you can get to it at home. So we're seeing a huge new group of products that are recreating these kind of restaurant quality meals using walnuts because they add that crunch, they add that texture, they add something dynamic. This is a great product. It is chipotle glazed carrots, which can be a bit mushy, especially if you're preparing them in a microwave, not a chef's, perfect technique and hands. So how you kind of overcome that mushiness is by using walnuts in them. You also see walnuts in a lot of prepared salads, and we're starting to see a huge growth of walnuts in pastas. So over in Italy, it's very common where your raviolis are filled with walnuts and a combination of cheese. That's making its way over to the States as well as in vegan bolognese sauces. And then if you think about entrees, one of the biggest, products out there whenever we talk about, the food service market is Panda Express honey walnut shrimp. It's kind of what they've built their restaurant on and one of their top sellers. And again, it's something that now can be replicated in the frozen aisle of supermarkets. And then the last one I'm going to talk about is plant-based category. We talked earlier, or we didn't, but the Whole Foods speaker talked about their trends. One of their top trends last year in 2024 or 2023 was putting the plant back in plant-based food. Very important comment, because there's nothing more aligned with plants than walnuts. So we're seeing a big movement for these plant-based food manufacturers to clean up their labels, and walnuts can play a very strong starring role. This is one such product. I already talked about the Amy's. This one is from north of the border up in Quebec, and it is a lentil and walnut burger. Again, they've created a plant-based food where it's actually got texture that tastes like ground beef, and the walnuts provide that texture. Walnuts are also great in plant-based creamers, plant-based milks, products like that, as well as in tacos. We're going to have an empanada later, but if anybody's familiar with the Velvet Taco chain, they use walnuts in a lot of their plant-based limited time offers, where they use this ground walnut meat as a way to provide something that still tastes like ground beef, but in a plant-based formats. So, real quick before I turn it back over to walnuts, or to Robert, walnuts are really the cure right now for the innovation gap we see in the industry. That's the chart that says what I said earlier. If you look at that top chart, you can see the amount of new products, this is from Mintel, that have been launched in the food industry has plateaued. We've never recovered since COVID. And then if you look at, where new products are coming from, January to May of 2007, 50% were truly new products. That same time frame in 2024, only 26. So we're seeing food manufacturers try to figure out, when can I invest in the innovation and when do I need to focus on +1 line extensions? Walnuts, is what we've talked about in all these categories, are that perfect +1 line extension. I love this graphic. I must be honest, I taste well with others. Think about all the products you make and think how they could be improved with maybe a different texture, a different nut, something that has different benefits to it. Taking a blueberry muffin and turn it into a blueberry walnut. A shrimp and honey or a shrimp and honey frozen meal and adding walnuts for that extra bit of texture. So there's all sorts of ways you can make walnuts a +1 in a product that'll lead to longevity. These are all products that have walnut variations that have been on the market for more than 10 years. So there is longevity whenever you talk about walnuts. +1 is one thing. I'm going to bring Robert back on to talk about innovation, which is another area that walnuts can help food and beverage manufacturers.
Okay, walnuts is back. Thank you, Keith. So let's talk a little bit about walnut innovation and some things that I think are coming down the pike as important. One is walnut butter. On your tray, you have two different walnut butters for tasting. One is straight, plain, maybe a touch of salt, of just a walnut butter. It's the lighter one, of course. The second one is a chocolate brownie walnut butter, which is pretty tasty. So you can have a taste of those. So what's happening with walnut butters that is new to the market is the amount of market forms that I was talking about earlier, not chopped and diced and sliced and peeled. However, being able to get them in every size, from pouches to totes to buckets, depending on, you're doing a plant trial, you're testing something out, it's a small percentage in your formula, hopefully not, then you might need to get some different pack sizes. So there's a lot of varieties out there, and the flavor profiles range from sweet to savory, and from local flavors of America to international flavors of spicy. To me, one of the most exciting things that I want to give you a taste today are walnut creams. Now, it isn't a new concept to take walnuts, puree them with water or something to get them creamy. But what I'd like you to do next is, on your tray there, you'll see to the center, there is a white cream that is not the green one. That's next to empanada, so one in the center. If you can pop that open, that is a medium walnut cream, slightly sweetened with a touch of salt. So that all that is 50% walnuts, peeled, the skinless, 50% water, pureed for 4 minutes, with a touch of sugar and salt. Isn't that incredible? And what you can do with that is a spread, a dressing, a dip. I mean, it goes on forever, right? And it goes on forever so much. And notice the different ratios. And so what we've been working on is, I'd love the flavor of a skin-on walnut. It's tremendous. Raw, roasted. However, skinless is also desirable. And as you can see here, we've come up with 3 different ratios and 3 different formulas to take you through thin, medium, thick. So how might these be used differently? Oh, if you only knew. So we take the walnut in the center, the walnut cream, and if you go straight up to the top, right, that's where you can see the thin walnut cream, and it can just be a replacement. Almost anything, depending on the functionality. Are you heating it? Thermal processing, all those things that are just reality in manufacturing. You can replace it straight on. But then you can go to the left and make different foams. You can go to the right, sweet, savory, bakery. I mean, it used to be a chef thing, but nowadays it's a lot more. Over to the right, we have a medium, which is what you're tasting right there. A medium viscosity. Keith's getting ahead to empanada. I knew you were going to do that. Okay, so we have the medium viscosity over here, and then over to the left is the thick viscosity. So I've been using Mind Map for some years to understand the cuisines of Southeast Asia. Frankly, 20 years ago, mind mapping, what is a tom yum soup? And so getting into walnut creams is like, what is it? Not just as a narrative, but if I'm working with a client or I'm working with my team and we're developing products, we need to systematically look at what is the properties of it chemically, physically, organoleptically, right? So what's in it? How does it perform? What does it taste like? And that will guide the way in which we use it. So here, you can see just a few things. These are all made with walnut cream. Yes. Yeah, of course I can. Talk to me.
I love your presentation. I love the food. I love everything. That's the best part of casting I've ever seen.
Well, thank you. Tell us why. What's useful? Like, what makes it useful to you that made you think and stop me?
I see better on the right than the left of where I'm at, but medium viscosity walnut cream is a good replacement for mayonnaise. I hate mayonnaise.
Yeah.
I hate mayonnaise. It makes me throw up. But the ability to get maybe a garlic aioli, but using walnut cream instead seems pretty excellent, especially if you want to do that, right?
I would agree.
Do you have something like this to share with the brands so that as they look for replacements in things? I love it. Where did this happen?
From me and Keith or Jennifer. Yeah, happy to share this and deeper dives into it and recipes and formulas and applications. Thank you for the feedback. Yeah, awesome. So, but you can look at, and so up what you have here, I mean, check it out. In the top left, of course, it's a cream. You can make a trifle with it. You can stack it up fine. All the way to the right, that's a bacon walnut baklava. So, I mean, meat's okay, especially when it's paired with walnuts. So we have a bacon walnut baklava with the walnut cream on top. Right below it, that is the thin walnut cream, sweetened, put in a charger, and just dispensed into this beautiful, thick, creamy walnut foam. And then the two in the middle here, actually I didn't make them. We had a group of chefs. We host our harvest tours each year for manufacturers and for folks that are interested in using more walnuts in their menus and their products, et cetera. So we had a group of chefs up in Napa Valley cooking in a menu innovation workshop, not gallivanting around, but going through the farms, learning about walnuts. It's the first time we showed that map. I've cleaned it up since then. And in the middle are from what two chefs did. This is a walnut cream on top of some toast with avocado, poached eggs, and a walnut salsa matcha. Yum. Right? So all these things are from walnut cream. And now let's taste the savory version. In front of you, you have an empanada, handcrafted, and you have a cream next to it, which is a cilantro cream. So the empanada, the crust itself is 10% of the flour is defatted walnut protein powder. So upcycled product after making walnut oil replaces some of the flour, gives it functionality, flavor, nutrition, yum. So that's in the dough. You have a question? Yes. They can because of their delicious fat. Yes, and healthy fat. Depends on the packaging, depends on where you're storing it. Keith, go right ahead.
It's a whole lot of factors. Big one is packaging. Transparent? Is it opaque? You want to try to limit the light, but I mean, there are countless products on supermarkets that have 12-month or longer shelf life with walnuts in them. So you can attain it. It helps to use it as an inclusion in a product. That's obviously going to be more beneficial. And then just making sure you're always taking care of that nut from whenever you receive it to whenever you package it, that it's not sitting out, things like that. So there are things you can do. We can talk afterwards about specific products. But yeah, you can get a 12-month shelf life because, there's tons of products with walnuts in them that accomplish that.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you. So in there, for the walnut cream, I'm not going to use walnut halves. That doesn't make sense, right? So you can use random pieces, lower cost, color, depending on what you want, right? Because there's different varieties of color. But in the walnut empanada, it's about 40% walnuts. No meat in there whatsoever. Cooked down spices, onions, tomatoes, roasted peppers, some walnuts. And that's not a revolutionary idea, obviously. I hope it's tasty. And for the cilantro cream, that's made with skin-on walnuts with a little bit of cilantro, green onion, lime zest. I kept it really simple because I wanted you to taste the walnuts and the empanada itself. It's the first time we've served this empanada with that dough on it. I want candid feedback on what do you think of the texture? Too dry, too crunchy, nice and flaky? What do you think? What's that? Dude, you have no idea. This morning, me waiting, my wife keeps looking at me, you better bake them. I'm like, yeah, just wait. I'm like, I can't keep them warm. I almost brought an oven. No, I literally almost brought an oven. It's moist enough, right? Okay, fantastic. Okay. Well, that is a little bit of my story with Walnut Innovation. I'm going to hand this back over to my colleague, Keith.
Yes, and we're going to close it by talking real briefly about two things. The nutritional benefits of walnuts as well as some sourcing. Because hopefully by the end I've convinced you that you need to add walnuts to all your products, and we'll talk about how you go about getting those. So here's a 40,000-foot viewpoint of the nutrition of walnuts. 4 grams of protein, 2 grams of fiber, good fats. That's what I really want to focus on. Because whenever you look at the types of fats, 13 grams of polyunsaturated fats, 2.5 grams of monounsaturated fats, that's completely different than any other tree nut out there. As you can see from this chart, it's almost completely flipped in terms of the fat profile. What does that mean? Those polyunsaturated fats are responsible for the alpha-linolenic acid, omega-3 fatty acids. So whenever we talk about walnuts, we are talking about a nut that is the only nut that is significantly high in omega-3 fatty acids. And we see that in a lot of products. If you go down any trail mix, a lot of granolas have it, you'll see that they'll have omega-3 mix on there. And it's usually because they're using a combination of walnuts and flax seeds in the product. So why is that important? There's countless amounts of research that has come out about ALA, omega-3 fatty acids, which, by the way, why we call them essential fatty acids, our body doesn't produce them. So we can only get them through food. So this is especially important that this is a plant-based version because where you also get them is in fatty fish, things like salmon and tuna. But if you're a plant-based vegetarian, vegan eater, you need to get them from a source like walnuts. So what do omega-3 fatty acids do? Heart health, brain health, and there's even been studies out there that shows they have a reduced risk of all-cause mortality if you have a diet high in these ALA omega-3 fatty acids. I could talk for hours about the health benefits. I'm not going to do that. We only have about 4 minutes left. But I do want to highlight 3 things. First one is 25% of shoppers seek brain function benefits from their food. I think this is really the next frontier of functional food. Everybody's worried about cognition. Everybody's worried about mental clarity, sleep, things like that. Daily walnut consumption has been associated with positive cognitive performance and supporting brain health. People know they look like brains. Nature is a wonderful thing, so maybe she's telling us something. Other big thing that people care a lot about is gut health. There's been a 330% increase in gut health searches over the past few years, and we also have emerging research that shows walnuts may support gut health due to their prebiotic potential. And then finally, younger generations prioritize food for energy and weight management. And research has shown that walnuts as a snack alternative boost metabolic health amongst young adults. So that Generation Z that has so much of the buying power. So I've convinced you all to use walnuts, I'm sure. We're going to do that. Now let's talk about where to get the best walnuts in the world. Right here in California. Good old California. They didn't start here, though. It's a really interesting story. So they're called the English walnut, but they were originally called the Persian walnut. Had a home in Persia, but they were traded by Englishmen along the Silk Road. So by the time they got to California, they were known as the English walnut. So a couple things. We've been growing walnuts here since 1700s, but in 1870s is where they first started commercially cultivating walnuts and growing them. This is the slide I like to do the whole Instagram thing, where it started, how it started, how it's going now. Walnuts used to grow mainly along the coast in Southern California, but now to take advantage of better growing conditions, water, and where most agriculture is grown, they're grown up in the Central Valley of California. What's also interesting about the walnut industry is this is great because we heard this if you were in the sessions this morning about what consumers value. There was one slide that had family farmers as something that consumers valued significantly whenever it came to how they chose their food. We've got 4,600 growers, and most of them are multi-generational. A large percentage. So the walnut industry is still mainly a family-based industry. We grow here in California 670,000 tons of walnuts through those 4,600 growers. And then finally, to kind of wrap it all up, because it's something that everybody wants to know about, is sustainability. The good news is 100% of the walnut can be used. So there's three core parts of a walnut. We've got the hull, which is returned to the orchard, gives nutrients to the soil. We've got the shell, which if it's not sold in shell, that shell is then used as an abrasive, like in sandblasting. And then we've got the kernel, which is what we've been talking about all day today. And what I really want to stress is that it's this amazing kind of meat, this ingredient, this food product that can be used in so many things, from baking to beverages to plant-based foods. Shelly's got a whole lot of ideas to help you with. So if you have any questions now or in the future, there's Chef Robert and mine's contact info. Really appreciate you taking the time from this busy conference to learn a little bit about walnuts. Questions? Yes?
I came in a little late, so I might have missed this. Does the organization have an incubation arm or venture capital arm to help emerging brands use walnuts in their products?
No, we don't have a incubation necessarily, but we do help with product development. So we'll help with supporting them through sampling, through talking about innovative and inspiration. We do a lot of research. We develop a lot of innovative prototypes. So we do work with brands from that perspective. And if they are interested in introducing an innovative walnut product, we've done formulation research, technical research, and help on that manner. Yes, correct. Yep, no charge. Yep. Any other questions? Excellent. Thank you all for attending. If you have anything, we'll be here the rest of the conference. Thanks a lot.